Hello everyone, I'm Lee Tiao Uyen. It's a pleasure to meet you all again in today's story. There are pains that don't come from a blow, nor do they require screams or bloodshed. They come silently, creeping into the heart like a blunt knife, cutting slowly but deeply. And the cause of that pain is nothing other than human greed. When money is put on the scale, character sometimes becomes frighteningly cheap. Even more so, the betrayer is often the one we least expect. The story begins on a quiet morning. The CEO sitting alone by the window, a cup of coffee that had long since gone cold in front of him. The early morning sunlight slanted through the trees, casting a pensive expression on his face. At that moment, Leon's mind wasn't focused on his daily work, but on an unnameable feeling of unease. That feeling had followed him for many nights, as if something was silently happening behind his back. He picked up the phone and called Miss Anne. His voice was calm, but behind that composure was a heightened sense of caution. He requested the immediate phone number of the investor of the Fukang project, along with the complete bidding documents. For the CEO, this was not just a business project, but also a test of his trust in his closest associates. At a familiar coffee shop, a meeting with Mr. Cam, the representative of Fukang Company, was quickly arranged. When the two met, the atmosphere was initially quite open. They exchanged pleasantries and talked about the company's reputation and construction quality. But as time went on, the CEO's gaze became sharper. He presented his company's bidding documents, clearly stating his desire to receive them in person to avoid any mistakes. Mr. Cam took the documents, slowly flipping through each page. The more he read, the more pensive his expression became. Finally, he looked up and said something that made the CEO's heart sink. He said the contents were very familiar, as if he had read them somewhere before. Two sets of documents lay side by side on the table. No one spoke, but the silence was suffocatingly heavy. A quick glance revealed that the two sets of documents were more than 90% identical. Every number, every plan, every detail was almost identical. At that moment, the CEO wasn't angry. He only felt a chill in his heart, cold with disappointment. Cold with the realization that the traitor wasn't far away. And that betrayal wasn't just the loss of a project, but the collapse of trust. While schemes and conspiracies were gradually being revealed in the business world, elsewhere, Xiao Yuan began her day with her usual hardship. Early in the morning, Yuan left her small house and walked along the dirt road leading to a farmer's garden. The morning air was still damp with mist, but the intense sun heralded a long and arduous day ahead. Uyen carried a small knife, her face showing signs of exhaustion, but her eyes remained She asked the gardener about every detail, from how to choose aloe vera leaves that were ripe enough, to how to cut them without damaging the flesh inside. Ian's hands moved swiftly, each stroke of the knife neat but careful. For her, each aloe vera leaf, each passion fruit, was the result of her labor, her money for food and rent, her entire future. No one ever heard Uyen complain about poverty. She never allowed herself to be weak. Even though her shirt was soaked with sweat, Uyen quietly continued working, as if she had been accustomed to the difficulties surrounding her for a long time. When the sun rose high, Uyen took her aloe vera and passion fruit to the market to sell. In the midst of the bustling market, she stood in a small corner, her voice soft as she invited passers-by. Some bought, some just looked and walked away. But Uyen maintained a polite smile. Each small coin was exchanged, not large, but clean and full of self-respect. Amidst the bustling crowd, the CEO unexpectedly appeared. He was on his way to a business trip when he saw Uyen. The sight of the small, thin girl intently selling her goods made him stop. In that moment, he suddenly saw the bitter contrast of life. On one side were people willing to sell their morals for money. On the other side was a poor girl, living by her own labor, without complaint or bowing her head. The CEO bought sugarcane juice and pastries, quietly helping her with small gestures. Uyen thanked him with a sincere smile, unaware that this fleeting encounter would gradually become a major turning point in her life. And from that moment, two people from two different worlds began to enter the same vortex, where truth, greed, and character would be revealed, one by one. The afternoon slowly descended on the familiar road leading to little Uyen's small house. The setting sun cast a pale yellow hue, but it wasn't enough to dispel the heavy feeling that enveloped her heart. Uyen walked slowly, her legs aching after a whole day selling goods at the market. In her mind, there was only one simple wish: to return to her small house, close the door, cook a simple meal, and rest. But life doesn't allow people such peace for long. The sudden stop of a motorbike right in front of her startled Uyen. Tam stood there, his familiar figure but his eyes completely unfamiliar. That gaze no longer held the warmth of the past, but instead was scrutinizing, contemptuous, and a hint of barely concealed resentment. Tam's voice, laced with cold sarcasm, rang out. He asked Uyen where she was going, then unhesitatingly uttered vile insinuations about her being protected by someone else. Each word, each sentence, was like a blunt knife cutting into Uyen's heart. She didn't cry, nor did she scream in protest. Uyen stood still for a few seconds, as if to compose herself. Before her was the man she had once trusted, the emotional support he had provided during her most difficult times. But now, all that remained was a distant memory. Uyen took a deep breath. Her voice rang out, not loud, but clear and resolute. She said that she was poor, but had never sold her integrity. She worked to support herself. Every penny she earned was clean. Uyen didn't need anyone's pity, and she wouldn't tolerate being insulted by vile words. Every word Uyen spoke came from the bottom of her heart, carrying the self-respect she had preserved for so many years. Tam paused briefly, but only for a moment. He laughed, a laugh full of contempt. Tam thought Uyen was feigning morality, putting on a show of nobility. In his anger, he grabbed Uyen's hand, trying to hold her back. In that moment, Uyen no longer felt afraid. The only thing that welled up inside her was a painful disappointment. Not disappointment at being hurt, but because the man before her had completely lost the image she once cherished. Uyen looked straight into Tam's eyes and said that he was the one who was truly pitiable, because he had let money cloud his conscience, letting greed transform him into a different person. For Uyen, the past ended at this moment. She pulled her hand away, turned her back, and walked away without looking back, leaving behind a man slowly sinking deeper into his own depravity. Meanwhile, at the CEO's company, a tense atmosphere permeated the entire office. An emergency meeting was convened. The spacious meeting room felt unusually stifling. Miss Anne sat to one side, her face filled with worry. Mr. Hoang had requested an unexpected trip back to his hometown and couldn't attend. Only one chair remained empty. Mr. Tam's seat, making the atmosphere even heavier. The CEO sat at the head of the table, his gaze calm but cold. On the outside, he maintained his composure, but inside, the pieces of suspicion were gradually falling into place. He no longer hoped it was just a coincidence. When Tam entered the meeting room, he maintained his usual confident demeanor. A forced smile, a few polite greetings, as if it were just a normal meeting. But after only a few minutes, that confidence began to waver. The CEO placed a thick stack of files on the table. He asked Tam to examine them carefully. That was the bid document from the company that won the Puak Than project, a project that the CEO's company had narrowly lost. Silence fell. The sound of turning pages echoed dryly. Tam tried to maintain his composure, saying that the document contained nothing unusual. The CEO didn't argue. He pointed out every detail that was identical, from the construction plan to the smallest numbers. Then he presented the final piece of evidence. The email was sent from an internal IP address, the time matched, and the fingerprint login system was accessible only to Tam. The evidence was presented slowly and precisely, leaving no room for denial. Tam's face turned pale. His justifications became disjointed and weak. He said he didn't do it intentionally, that nothing had caused significant damage, that it was just an accident. Finally, Tam, with a trembling voice, begged for a second chance. In that moment, his arrogance vanished, leaving only a man terrified of the consequences of his own actions. But the CEO remained unmoved, his voice lowered, slow but firm. He said the biggest loss wasn't money, but trust. He mentioned the supply shortage, the unusual signs he had been secretly monitoring for a long time. To him, this was no longer a mistake, but a deliberate betrayal. The decision was made immediately. Mr. Tam was fired. All data had to be handed over to Miss Anne. Tam was asked to leave the company that day. As he stood up, Tam could no longer maintain his pleading demeanor. He uttered venomous, even threatening words, as a desperate way to hide his inner breakdown. The meeting room door closed. Silence fell. The CEO sat silently. His anger had subsided, leaving only emptiness and exhaustion. He never expected the person he had once trusted completely to change so quickly. Money, once again, showed him its destructive power when it falls into the hands of weak-hearted people. Elsewhere, Xiao Yuan returned to her small room. She sat down on the edge of the bed, sighing softly. The encounter with Tom still haunted her, but deep down, Yuan knew she had made the right choice. Despite poverty and hardship, she had preserved her most precious possession, her character. And for Yuan, that alone allowed her to hold her head high and move forward. The story concludes with a bitter contrast. One person had everything but lost themselves. Another had nothing but their hands and self-respect, yet retained the greatest value of humanity.